The sound of a wheelchair creaking came from the hallway. I was in the kitchen of my in-laws' house, washing dishes from my lonely dinner, when I heard it. That familiar metallic squeak I'd grown so used to over the past 3 years. Squeak, pause. Emma's wheelchair. She must need something. I dried my hands and turned toward the doorway, ready to see my sister-in-law in her usual position, slumped slightly to the left, her legs covered with a knitted blanket, her eyes apologetic for needing help. But what I saw instead made the glass I was holding slip from my fingers and shatter on the tile floor. Emma was standing, not leaning, not holding on to anything, just standing, perfectly straight, both feet planted firmly on the hardwood floor. And she was walking toward me, not shuffling, not stumbling, walking with the confident stride of someone who'd been doing it their entire life. "Don't scream," she said, her voice clear and strong, not the hesitant whisper I'd heard maybe twice in 3 years. "And don't panic. We don't have much time." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. My brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. "Emma, you're walking? Talking?" She crossed the kitchen in 4 smooth steps and placed a thick manila envelope on the counter between us. "Yeah, I've been able to do both since I was 10 years old. The paralysis, the selective mutism, all an act." I gripped the edge of the counter to keep from collapsing. "What? Why?" "Because it was the only way to survive in this house," she said, her eyes locked on mine with an intensity I'd never seen before. "And because I needed someone to trust before I could reveal the truth. You're that person, Claire. You're the only one who ever treated me like I was human." She pushed the envelope toward me. "In here is everything you need to know. Bank statements, text messages, photos, medical records, proof that your husband and my stepmother have been planning to divorce you, take everything you own, and frame you as mentally unstable." The room tilted. "What? They leave for Hawaii in the morning. You were supposed to stay here and babysit me." She made air quotes with her fingers. "But what they don't know is that I've been documenting everything for the past 2 years. Every conversation, every plan, every lie." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Claire, your husband is planning to have you committed to a psychiatric facility. They've already forged documents saying you're a danger to yourself. They're going to file them the day after they get back from Hawaii." My knees buckled. Emma caught me, her grip strong and steady. "Real? How?" I couldn't form full sentences. "How is this possible?" She smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was the smile of someone who'd been hiding in plain sight for years, watching and waiting. "My stepmother created a paralyzed, mute stepdaughter to collect disability benefits and sympathy. She needed a prop. I became one voluntarily because it gave me invisibility, and invisible people see everything." She tapped the envelope. "Everything is in here, but we need to move fast. They think you're weak. They think you'll just accept whatever they do to you. Are they right?" I looked at Emma, really looked at her. This woman, girl, really, she was only 24, had spent years pretending to be helpless while everyone around her lived their lies. And now she was standing in front of me, offering me a weapon. I thought about the past 3 years, about David, my husband, who used to bring me coffee in bed and now barely acknowledged my existence. About Susan, my mother-in-law, who criticized everything I did while treating me like free domestic labor. About the way I'd shrunk myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into a space they clearly didn't want me to occupy. I picked up the envelope, feeling its weight in my hands. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. "They're not right." Emma's smile widened. "Good. Because we have about 12 hours before they leave. And in that time, we're going to make sure they never see Hawaii." She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. "I've already contacted a lawyer, a really good one. She's expecting us at her office at 8 a.m. tomorrow. But first, we need to make copies of everything, transfer some files, and I need to show you something in the garage that's going to make you very, very angry." I stared at this woman I thought I knew. This supposedly helpless person who'd just blown my entire reality apart. "Emma, how long have you been planning this?" She looked up from her phone, her expression suddenly serious. "Since the day you brought me that sketch pad and asked what I liked to draw. You were the first person in 7 years who asked me what I wanted, not what I needed, not what I could or couldn't do, what I wanted." Her voice cracked slightly. "You treated me like a person, Claire, so I'm going to save you like one. Now come on, we have a lot to do before sunrise, and you're going to want to see this before you decide what happens next." She walked toward the garage door, moving with the ease of someone who'd been secretly practicing in the middle of the night for years. I followed her, the envelope clutched to my chest, my entire world rewriting itself with every step. "My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 29 years old, and I was about to learn that the past 3 years of my life had been a carefully orchestrated lie. But more importantly, I was about to learn that I wasn't the only one who'd been trapped, and together, we were about to break free. Let me take you back 6 months to help you understand how I ended up here. My marriage to David Morgan started like a fairy tale. We met at a hospital fundraiser where I was working as an event coordinator. He was a financial consultant, charming, attentive, with the kind of smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He pursued me relentlessly. Flowers at my office, surprise picnics, long conversations that stretched past midnight. When he proposed after 8 months, I said yes without hesitation. I should have hesitated. The warning signs appeared slowly, like a rash you don't notice until it's covered half your body. During our engagement, David insisted we have dinner with his mother, Susan, every Sunday. "Family is important to me," he'd say. I found it sweet. Susan Morgan was a former real estate agent who'd retired after her husband died, living on life insurance money and rental income from several properties. She had perfect posture, perfect hair, and a perfectly cold way of assessing everything I did. "Your skirt is too short for a family dinner," she'd said the first time we met. "David deserves a wife who understands propriety." I'd changed clothes before dessert. "You're serving store-bought bread?" she'd asked another time, holding up a dinner roll like it was evidence in court. No wonder David's been losing weight. David had gained 5 pounds, but I'd learned not to correct her. Then there was Emma, David's half-sister from his father's first marriage. She'd been living with Susan since she was 8 years old, after a severe illness left her, according to family legend, unable to walk or speak in complete sentences. The story was tragic. Spinal meningitis at age 8, emergency hospitalization, weeks in the ICU. When she finally came home, she was in a wheelchair, could barely whisper, and required round-the-clock care. "Emma is a blessing and a burden," Susan would say, sighing dramatically. "But we do what family requires." The first time I met Emma, she was 21 years old, sitting in a wheelchair by the window, staring at birds in the backyard. Her legs were covered with a blanket. Her hands rested limply in her lap. When I said hello, she looked up with wide, fearful eyes and didn't respond. "She doesn't talk much," David had explained quietly. "The doctors say the trauma affected her neurologically. Sometimes she can manage a few words, but mostly she communicates through nods and simple signs." I'd knelt beside her wheelchair. "Hi, Emma. I'm Claire. I'm going to marry your brother." She'd blinked at me. Then, slowly, she'd smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes. That was the moment I decided I liked her. After the wedding, David suggested we live in the house next to his mother's. "It makes sense," he'd said. "We can help with Emma, and Mom won't be so lonely." I'd wanted to stay in the city, but he'd already signed the lease before asking me. That's how I ended up living 50 feet from my mother-in-law, who had a key to our house and used it liberally. The first year was bearable. I kept my job as an event coordinator, commuting 40 minutes to the city. I'd come home to find Susan in my kitchen, reorganizing my cabinets. "This is more efficient," she'd say, not apologizing. David worked long hours, later and later. "Big client," he'd explain. "Important project." Always something keeping him away. I started spending time with Emma. Susan expected me to help with her care, since you're right next door, so I'd go over in the evenings to sit with her. At first, Emma seemed nervous around me. She'd watch me carefully, flinching if I moved too quickly. But gradually, she relaxed. I brought her art supplies, fashion magazines, a tablet loaded with audiobooks, things Susan said were a waste on someone in her condition. Emma would smile at each gift. Sometimes she'd touch my hand gently, her only way of saying thank you. I learned her routine: morning transfers from bed to wheelchair, afternoon by the window, evening before the TV, watching old movies with subtitles. I learned that she could say some words, but they came out strained and childlike. "Thank you," she'd whisper when I brought her water. And I learned that Susan treated her like a particularly expensive piece of furniture, fed her, changed her, positioned her by windows for sunlight and circulation, but never talked to her like she was a person who might have thoughts or feelings. "She doesn't understand most of what we say," Susan would tell visitors. "The brain damage was severe. She's like a child." But when I looked in Emma's eyes, I didn't see a child. I saw someone watching, waiting, understanding more than she let on. By our second anniversary, my marriage was a hollow shell. David barely touched me. We hadn't had sex in 8 months. He was stressed, or tired, or busy. I tried everything: romantic dinners, new lingerie, couples therapy suggestions. He'd pat my hand and say, "We're fine, Claire. You're being dramatic." But we weren't fine. I just didn't know how not fine until much later. The real breaking point came 4 months before that night in the kitchen. I was cleaning David's home office while he was at work, something Susan said I should do more often, when I found his phone charger tangled in his desk drawer. I pulled it out and saw a notification light up on his phone, which was tucked behind his monitor. "Jessica, can't wait for this weekend. I'll bring the champagne." My stomach dropped. I knew I shouldn't look. Knew it was an invasion of privacy, but my hands moved before my brain could stop them. The passcode was our anniversary, a small, bitter irony. The messages loaded, hundreds of them, going back over a year. Jessica from his office, photos of her in lingerie, photos of them together, messages detailing hotel rooms, work trips, dinner dates, while I thought he was at client meetings. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. But what made me actually drop it was the message thread from 3 days ago. "David, Claire asked about couples therapy today." "Jessica, what did you say?" "David, I put her off. Won't matter soon anyway. Once the plan is in motion, she'll be too focused on other things to worry about our marriage." "Jessica, your mom is sure this will work?" "David, Mom's been planning it for months. Claire won't know what hit her." I sat on the floor of his office, phone in my lap, reading and rereading those words. A plan. My mother-in-law and my husband had a plan. I wanted to scream, to break things, to call David right then and demand answers. But something stopped me, some instinct for self-preservation I didn't know I had. Instead, I took photos of every message with my own phone, scrolled back through months of evidence, documented everything. Then I put David's phone back exactly where I found it, and walked out of his office like nothing had happened. That night at dinner, I smiled at David and asked about his day. He kissed my forehead and said it was fine, boring work stuff. I said nothing. From that day forward, I became a detective in my own life. I watched, I listened, I documented. I heard Susan and David talking in hushed voices when they thought I couldn't hear. Heard words like commitment evaluation and mental health hold and power of attorney. I saw documents David left in his briefcase, papers from a lawyer I'd never heard of, drafts of something that looked like a psychiatric evaluation with my name on it, describing symptoms I'd never had. Evaluation with my name on it, describing symptoms I'd never had. And slowly, I realized what was happening. They were building a case, creating a narrative, painting me as mentally unstable, possibly dangerous, definitely incompetent. Why? The house was in both our names. My parents had helped with the down payment. My job paid well. I had savings. If David just divorced me, I'd get half of everything. But if I was deemed mentally incompetent, if I was committed to a facility for my own safety, David could get full control of our assets, power of attorney, everything, and Susan would get what she'd wanted all along. Her son back, unmarried, under her control, with no inconvenient wife making him soft. I should have confronted them, should have called a lawyer, should have left, but I was paralyzed by fear and disbelief. This was my husband, my mother-in-law, people I'd trusted, How could I prove they were plotting against me without sounding exactly as crazy as they were trying to make me seem? So I stayed quiet, kept documenting, and spent more and more time with Emma, the only person in that family who seemed to actually see me. I'd sit beside her wheelchair in the evenings, talking about my day, about stupid things like traffic and weather and the novel I was reading. She'd listen, her eyes focused on my face, occasionally smiling at something funny I said. "You're the only one who makes me feel sane anymore," I told her once. Emma had reached out and touched my hand. Then she'd picked up her letterboard, a communication device Susan insisted she use, and slowly pointed to letters. SANE, then pointed at me. YOUARE. "You are sane," I'd read aloud, tears pricking my eyes. "Thank you, Emma." She'd squeezed my hand, and I'd had no idea that she'd been listening to everything, planning everything, waiting for the right moment to reveal that she wasn't the helpless victim everyone believed her to be. That moment came the night David and Susan announced their Hawaii trip. "It's a sibling bonding vacation," Susan had said over Sunday dinner, her voice bright with fake enthusiasm. "David and I haven't had quality time in years. We're leaving Friday morning." I'd looked at David. "A vacation? Just the two of you?" "Family time," he'd said, not meeting my eyes. "You understand. What about me?" I'd asked, already knowing the answer. "Someone needs to stay with Emma," Susan had said, her tone making it clear I was that someone. "You've gotten so close to her. I'm sure you won't mind." It wasn't a question. "And honestly," she'd continued, cutting her roast with surgical precision, "this will be good for you. Some time alone to reflect. I've noticed you've been stressed lately." The way she said stressed made my blood run cold. It wasn't concern, it was documentation, another piece of evidence for whatever they were building. I'd forced a smile. "Of course. I'm happy to stay with Emma." David had looked relieved. Susan had looked satisfied, and I'd felt like I was watching my own execution being planned at a family dinner table. That was 3 days ago. Now I was standing in Susan's garage, following Emma as she walked towards something covered with a tarp in the corner. "Are you ready?" she asked, her hand on the tarp. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She pulled the tarp aside. Underneath was a filing cabinet. Emma opened the top drawer. It was full of files, dozens of them, each labeled with dates and names. "Your file is the third one down," Emma said quietly. "But you should see the others first, to understand this is a pattern, not a personal attack." With shaking hands, I pulled out the first file, Jennifer Morrison, 2015-2016. I opened it. Photos of a young blonde woman, wedding pictures with David, then hospital admission forms, psychiatric evaluation forms, legal documents transferring property, divorce decree. "David's first wife," Emma said softly. Susan convinced him she was mentally unstable, had her committed, took everything. My mouth went dry. What happened to her? She got out after 6 months, moved to Oregon, changed her name. Too broken to fight for what they stole. I pulled out the second file. Catherine Chen, 2012-2013. Another woman. Wedding photos, psychiatric holds, asset transfers, divorce. "Susan's second husband," Emma explained. "My stepfather. He remarried after my dad died. Susan didn't like his new wife, so she destroyed her, took the life insurance money, and made him miserable until he died of a heart attack." I stared at the files, my hands trembling. "How many?" I whispered. "4 that I found. You're number 5. She pulled out my file. It was already thick. Medical records I'd never authorized. Doctor's notes about concerning behavior from physicians I'd never met. Witness statements from Susan and David describing my erratic moods and paranoid accusations. All fake, all fabricated, all building toward a conclusion. Claire Morgan is mentally unstable and requires psychiatric intervention. They were going to file these next week, Emma said, right after they got back from Hawaii. By then, you'd be isolated here with me. No one checking on you, no one to verify your side of the story. I couldn't breathe. Why? Why would they do this? Money, control, sick satisfaction. Emma's voice was hard. Susan is a narcissist who can't stand anyone taking her children's attention. David is her golden child who does whatever she says. Together they've been running this con for years. But why fake being paralyzed? I asked. Why let them treat you that way? Emma's expression softened. After my dad died, Susan became my legal guardian. I was only 8. At first, she tried to send me away. Boarding school, foster care, anything. But the life insurance money came with conditions. She had to keep me until I was 18. She took a breath. When I got sick with meningitis, she saw an opportunity. If I was severely disabled, she could claim benefits, sympathy, and use me as a prop. So when I recovered, she told me I hadn't. Convinced doctors I had permanent damage, kept me in that wheelchair. But you could walk, I said. I taught myself in secret. Late at night when she was asleep, I'd practice walking, talking, being normal, because I knew eventually I'd need to escape. But I couldn't leave until I was old enough, strong enough, and had enough evidence to make sure she never did this to anyone else. She looked at me with fierce determination. You're the first person who made me want to stop hiding, who made me believe someone might actually listen. So I'm walking now. I'm talking now. And I'm giving you everything you need to burn this family to the ground. I looked at the files, at the evidence, at this incredible woman who'd spent years pretending to be helpless so she could protect others. What do we do? Emma smiled. First, we make copies of everything. Then we visit my lawyer at 8 a.m. By the time they land in Hawaii tomorrow afternoon, we'll have already filed emergency orders, restraining orders, asset freezes, everything. She pulled out her phone. And then we're going to do something they'll never expect. What? We're going to Hawaii too. We're going to walk into whatever restaurant they're celebrating at, and we're going to show them exactly what happens when you underestimate the women you tried to destroy. I stared at her. Then, for the first time in months, I started to laugh. Real, genuine laughter that came from somewhere deep and broken, finally starting to heal. They're going to lose their minds, I said. Yes, Emma agreed. Yes, they are. That night, Emma and I worked until 3 a.m. We photocopied every document in that garage filing cabinet, scanned files to 3 different cloud services, made backup drives and mailed them to Emma's lawyer. I learned things about my husband I'd never imagined, things that made my skin crawl. David had done this before, not once but twice. 2 previous marriages that ended with the wives institutionalized, their assets transferred, their reputations destroyed. Jennifer Morrison tried to warn you, Emma said, showing me a Facebook message sent to my account 2 years ago. Look, from Jennifer Morrison. Date March 15th, 2021. Subject: please read this. You don't know me, but I was married to David Morgan from 2015-2016. If you're reading this, you're either dating him or married to him. Please, please be careful. He and his mother are dangerous. They will destroy you. I tried to tell people and they had me committed. I lost everything. Please don't let them do this to you. If you need help, contact me. I stared at the message, dated 6 months after my wedding. I never saw this. David has access to your email, Emma said. He's been monitoring and deleting messages for years. I found the login credentials in his desk. My stomach turned. How long had I been living in a surveillance state without knowing? Emma pulled out another file. Catherine Chen, his second wife, tried to sue. David's lawyer crushed her. She ended up homeless, discredited, with a restraining order that made her look like a stalker. How is this legal? I whispered. It's not. But Susan has connections. Lawyers who owe her favors. Doctors who falsify records for the right price. She's been building this network for decades. We worked in silence after that, the weight of what we were uncovering pressing down on both of us. Around 2 a.m., Emma stood up and stretched. I watched her move, fluid, natural, completely unlike the rigid, jerky movements she'd always shown in her wheelchair. Can I ask you something? I said quietly. Anything. When did you decide to stop pretending? Emma sat down on an old workbench, her legs dangling. For a moment, she looked exactly like the young woman she should have been. 24, full of life, instead of the prisoner she'd chosen to become. The day you brought me that sketch pad, she said finally, you asked what I liked to draw, not what I could draw given my limitations. What I liked. She smiled, but it was sad. No one had asked me what I liked in 16 years. Susan told me what to wear, What to eat, where to sit, what to watch on TV. David ignored me completely, unless Susan made him help move me. But you saw me as a person who might have preferences. Of course you're a person, I said. Not to them. Emma's voice hardened. To them I'm a prop, a tax write-off, a way to generate sympathy and disability income. Susan has been collecting benefits in my name since I was 8 years old. That's fraud. That's the least of her crimes. Emma pulled out another file. This is what she's been doing with the money. Property records. Susan owned 7 rental properties, all purchased with funds that should have been supporting Emma's care. Bank statements showing large deposits from disability payments, immediately transferred to offshore accounts. She's been stealing from you for 16 years, I said, doing the math. That's got to be over $400,000, Emma finished. Plus the life insurance money from my dad that was supposed to be held in trust for me until I turned 25. She spent it on David's law school tuition, her properties, and various medical expenses that never actually happened. I shook my head in disbelief. How did you find all this? I'm paralyzed, remember? Emma's smile was sharp. No one pays attention to what I see or hear. No one closes doors around me or lowers their voices. I've been in every room of this house. I've heard every conversation. For 16 years, I've been invisible. She leaned forward, eyes intense. But I see everything, and I remember everything. Every illegal thing Susan has done. Every person David has hurt. Every law they've broken. All of it is in these files. Why didn't you go to the police? I tried once, when I was 15. Managed to call from Susan's cell phone while she was showering. Told them I was being held against my will. That I could actually walk and talk. Emma's expression darkened. Susan convinced them I was having a psychotic episode. Blamed it on medication. Had me evaluated by one of her paid doctors who said I was delusional. After that, she put locks on all the phones and told everyone I'd developed behavioral issues that required sedation. She drugged you? Horror washed over me. For about 2 years. Kept me in a fog so thick I barely remember ages 15 to 17. By the time she stopped, probably worried someone would notice, I'd learned my lesson. I couldn't escape until I was legally an adult with enough evidence to make sure she'd go to prison. And now you're 24, I said quietly. Now I'm 24, old enough to reclaim my life, with enough documentation to bury her. Emma stood up again, rolling her shoulders. I just needed one more thing. What? Proof that she was doing it again, to someone else. Someone with credibility, who people would believe. She looked at me directly. You, Claire, you're educated, employed, respected. You don't have a history of mental illness. If they try to frame you, and we have proof they're lying, the whole house of cards collapses. I understood then. You've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for you. The right victim at the right time. Someone worth saving. Emma's voice softened. And someone who might actually save me back. We finished our work around 3 a.m. Everything was copied, backed up, stored safely. Emma hid the originals back in the garage, making sure everything looked undisturbed. Then we went back inside the house, and Emma returned to her wheelchair. Watching her fold herself back into that prison made my chest ache. I have to keep pretending until tomorrow, she explained. If Susan suspects anything before she gets on that plane, she'll cancel everything, and we'll lose our advantage. How long until they leave? I checked my phone. 3:47 a.m. 5 hours. The flight is at 10 a.m. They're planning to leave here at 7:30. I nodded, exhaustion hitting me all at once. I should go home. Try to sleep. Claire? Emma reached out and grabbed my hand. Her grip was strong, nothing like the weak, trembling touch she usually showed. Thank you for believing me, for helping me. Thank you for trusting me, I replied, and for saving my life. We're saving each other, Emma corrected. That's what makes this work. I walked back to my house, the one I shared with David, though he hadn't slept there in 3 nights, and tried to rest. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw those files, those women. Proof that the man I'd married was a predator working with his mother to destroy vulnerable women. How had I missed this? What signs had I ignored? At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and showered, put on jeans and a comfortable shirt, travel clothes. Though jeans and a comfortable shirt, travel clothes, though David didn't know I'd be traveling. At 6:30, my phone buzzed. David, running late. Can you go over and start Emma's morning routine? We'll swing by before heading to airport. I stared at that text. The casualness of it. The assumption that I'd just comply. Me. Of course. Have a safe trip, David. Thanks, babe. We'll bring you back something nice. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. He probably believed it himself. I walked over to Susan's house. Let myself in with the key I'd been given. Found Emma exactly where she was supposed to be. In bed, looking helpless and sleepy. But when I closed the bedroom door, she opened her eyes and winked. Ready for the performance of a lifetime? She whispered. 20 minutes later, Susan and David arrived. Susan was wearing a designer travel outfit, expensive casual, the kind that cost more than my monthly car payment. David had on khakis and a polo shirt, looking like he was heading to a country club, not abandoning his wife. Oh good, you're already here, Susan said, barely looking at me. Emma needs her medication at noon. It's in the kitchen, labeled. Don't forget, she gets agitated if it's late. I nodded obediently. Emma sat in her wheelchair, looking blankly at the wall. And the physical therapist is coming Tuesday, Susan continued, checking her phone. Just let her in and supervise. Emma sometimes gets uncomfortable. I've got it, I said quietly. David kissed my cheek, a perfunctory gesture that made my skin crawl. Thanks for doing this, Claire. I know it's not how you wanted to spend your week. You have no idea how I want to spend my week, I thought. But I smiled and said, it's fine. Family helps family. Susan actually rolled her eyes at that. Well, we're off. Don't call unless it's an absolute emergency. We're going to be very busy with activities. I bet you are, I thought, remembering the text messages Emma had shown me. Messages between Susan and David discussing celebrating freedom and the Claire problem being resolved soon. They left in a flurry of luggage and last-minute instructions. I watched from the window as their car pulled away, heading toward the airport. The moment they were out of sight, Emma stood up from her wheelchair. They're gone, she said, her voice clear and strong. Let's go end this. We drove to the lawyer's office in Emma's car. Yes, she had a car, registered in her name, that she'd been secretly driving for 2 years during the few hours when Susan was definitely asleep. Attorney Rebecca Walsh was exactly what we needed. Sharp, skeptical, and furious once she heard our story. This is one of the most elaborate fraud schemes I've seen in 20 years of practice, she said, flipping through the files we'd brought. And I've seen some bad ones. Can we stop them? I asked. Stop them? Honey, we're going to destroy them. Rebecca's smile was predatory. First, we file an emergency motion for asset protection. Freeze all joint accounts. Prevent any transfers. That happens today. She made notes on a legal pad. Second, we file for an emergency restraining order based on the fraudulent psychiatric holds they were planning. That includes documentation of their previous victims, which establishes a pattern. What about the disability fraud? Emma asked. That's federal. We report it to Social Security Administration's fraud hotline, and they'll launch an investigation. With your cooperation and this documentation, Susan Morgan is looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Rebecca looked up, her expression serious. But I need you both to understand. This is going to get ugly. They'll fight back. They'll make accusations. They'll try to discredit both of you. Are you prepared for that? I looked at Emma. She looked at me. We both nodded. We're prepared, I said. Good, because by the time they land in Hawaii this afternoon, their bank accounts will be frozen, their assets will be locked, and they'll have federal investigators waiting to interview them when they get back. Rebecca stood up, extending her hand. Welcome to the fight of your life, ladies. Let's make sure you win. We spent the rest of the morning filing paperwork. Emergency motions, affidavits, detailed statements. By 2 p.m., everything was filed and approved by a sympathetic judge who'd seen too many elder abuse cases. By 3 p.m., David and Susan's bank accounts were frozen. By 4 p.m., restraining orders were issued. By 5 p.m., the Social Security fraud investigation was officially opened. Emma and I sat in Rebecca's office, exhausted and wired on adrenaline. What happens now? I asked. Rebecca smiled. Now they land in Hawaii with no access to money. When they try to check into their hotel, Their credit cards will be declined. When they call their bank, they'll be told their accounts are under legal hold. And when they call you, she pointed at me, you tell them exactly what they did wrong, and you let them know that every single plan they made has fallen apart. Emma leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. I want to see their faces when they realize they've lost. So do I said. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. You know their hotel information? I do, Emma said. Susan made me help her plan the trip by looking up restaurants and activities on the computer. She thought I was too stupid to remember the details. And you remember everything, Rebecca said, impressed. Everything, Emma confirmed. Hotel name, confirmation number, dinner reservations, all of it. I looked at Emma, an idea forming. What if we went there? To Hawaii? Rebecca looked surprised. Why not? The restraining order doesn't prevent me from being in the same state, and I'd love to see their reaction when they realize they didn't leave me behind after all. Emma's eyes lit up. Claire, that's brilliant. Completely petty and unnecessary and absolutely perfect. Rebecca laughed. I can't officially recommend that as your attorney, but as a human being who's watched too many bad people get away with too much, go for it. Just don't violate the restraining order. Stay at least 100 yards away at all times. Can we afford it? I asked Emma. She pulled out her phone, accessing a bank account I'd never seen before. My dad's life insurance trust matures when I turn 25, but there's a provision for educational or medical expenses before then. I'd say learning to confront my abusers counts as therapy. The account balance showed $147,000. Dad wanted me to have freedom, Emma said quietly. I think he'd approve of this use of funds. 2 hours later, we had plane tickets to Maui, hotel reservations, and a rental car. We'd arrive tomorrow afternoon, one day behind David and Susan, but with perfect timing to watch their world collapse. That night, I slept in Susan's house, in the guest room I'd used dozens of times before. But this time, Emma slept in the room next to mine. Not in her wheelchair, not pretending, just herself. Finally, honestly herself. And tomorrow, we'd show David and Susan exactly what happened when they underestimated the women they tried to destroy. The flight to Maui was surreal. Emma and I sat in coach, sharing a bag of pretzels, while somewhere ahead of us by 24 hours, David and Susan were discovering their vacation had turned into a nightmare. Do you think they figured it out yet? I asked as we cruised at 30,000 feet. Emma checked her phone. She'd set up Google Alerts for any activity on Susan's accounts. Their credit card was declined at the hotel this morning. And, oh, here we go. She showed me her screen. An email notification from their bank. Account under legal hold. Contact legal department. Susan is losing her mind right now, Emma said with satisfaction. She hates not being in control. What about David? He's probably calling his lawyer. Who's going to tell him there's nothing he can do until the court hearing next week? Emma smiled. By which point, we'll have already testified about everything they did. I stared out the window at clouds passing below us. I still can't believe this is happening. Yesterday I thought my marriage was just distant. Now I know my husband was planning to have me committed to steal my assets. Are you okay? Emma asked quietly. I thought about it. Really thought. I don't know. I'm angry, terrified, relieved, all of it at once. That's normal, Emma said. I felt that way for 16 years. I turned to look at her. Really look at her. This woman who'd spent over half her life pretending to be someone she wasn't, just to survive. How did you do it? I asked. How did you stay sane? Emma was quiet for a long moment. I didn't, always. There were times I wanted to give up, times I thought about just letting go, being the person they wanted me to be because it was easier than fighting. What stopped you? Spite, mostly. She laughed, but it wasn't entirely joking. I was so angry at Susan for stealing my life that I refused to give her the satisfaction of breaking me. Every day I pretended was a day I survived. Every secret I learned was ammunition for later. She looked at me directly, and then you showed up. And for the first time, I thought maybe survival wasn't enough. Maybe I could actually live again. You made me remember what it felt like to be treated like a human being. My eyes stung with unexpected tears. You saved my life, Emma. I was about to lose everything. We saved each other, she corrected. That's what makes this work. We landed in Maui at 2:00 p.m. local time. The air was warm and humid, carrying the scent of plumeria flowers and ocean salt. Under different circumstances, this would have been paradise. Under these circumstances, it was a battlefield. We picked up our rental car and drove to our hotel, not the same one as David and Susan. We'd chosen a smaller property about 3 miles away, close enough to reach them quickly, but far enough to maintain the restraining order distance. After checking in and dropping our bags, Emma pulled out her phone. According to Susan's dinner reservation, they're eating at the Sunset Grill tonight at 7 p.m. It's an open-air restaurant on the beach. Can we watch from a distance? I asked. Better. I made us a reservation at the bar area. It's technically a separate section, more than 100 yards from the dining tables. Completely legal. I changed into a sundress, one I'd bought years ago for a vacation with David that never happened. Emma wore jeans and a flowing top, her hair down for the first time since I'd known her. She looked beautiful, free. We arrived at the Sunset Grill at 6:45 p.m. and positioned ourselves at the far end of the outdoor bar. From here, we had a clear view of the restaurant entrance and dining area. At 7:05 p.m., David and Susan arrived. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in their body language. Susan's face was tight, her usual composure cracking. David looked stressed, his shoulders hunched. They were seated at a table near the water, the prime spot Susan had probably requested weeks ago. They still came to dinner, I said, surprised. Even with everything falling apart? Susan never cancels plans, Emma said. It would mean admitting something was wrong. She'd rather pretend everything is fine while her life burns down around her. A waiter appeared and took their drink orders. Susan ordered wine, expensive wine, from what I could tell by her gesturing. The waiter returned minutes later, speaking to her. Even from this distance, I could see Susan's face flush red. Credit card declined again? Emma said with satisfaction. They're going to have to pay cash, and I'm betting they didn't bring much. Susan always relies on cards for everything. David pulled out his wallet, counting bills. The waiter nodded and left. This is sad, I said, watching my husband of 3 years look defeated and embarrassed. I should feel worse for him. He was going to have you committed to a psychiatric facility, Emma reminded me. He was going to steal everything you owned and let you rot in an institution while he lived with his mistress. Don't waste sympathy on him. She was right, but it was still strange, watching someone I'd once loved have the worst night of his vacation. Susan was on her phone, typing furiously, probably trying to reach her lawyer, her bank, someone who could fix this. No one could fix this. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. David, Claire, something's wrong with our accounts. Can you check on Emma and call me back? I showed Emma the message. She grinned. Oh, this is perfect. He still thinks you don't know anything. Should I respond? Absolutely. Let him know you're busy. I typed carefully. Me. Emma's fine. We're actually having a great evening. Talk later. I hit send and watched from across the restaurant as David checked his phone. Watched his face across the restaurant as David checked his phone. Watched his face change from hope to confusion. He's calling you, Emma said. Sure enough, my phone started ringing. David's name flashing on the screen. I declined the call. Susan had noticed David's agitation. She grabbed his phone, reading the message. Her face went from angry to shocked. She tried calling me. I declined that too. They're realizing something, Emma said, but they don't know what yet. Susan typed something on David's phone. A text appeared on my screen. Susan. Claire, this is Susan. We need you to wire us money immediately. Our accounts have been compromised. This is an emergency. I laughed out loud. She wants me to send them money. The audacity is incredible. Don't respond yet, Emma advised. Let them panic a little longer. We ordered drinks, virgin piña coladas, since we wanted to be clear-headed, and watched the drama unfold. David and Susan's food arrived, but neither of them ate much. They were too busy on their phones, making calls, sending messages, trying to reach anyone who could explain what was happening. Around 8:00 p.m., Susan stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. She was yelling at David, her voice carrying across the restaurant even though I couldn't make out the words. She just figured out the accounts weren't hacked. Emma said. She figured out someone froze them legally. How do you know? Because she just said restraining order. I can read lips. Learned it during all those years of pretending not to understand conversations. David was shaking his head, looking panicked. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. My phone rang again, then Emma's phone, a number she didn't recognize. That's David trying to reach me on a different line, Emma said. He doesn't know I have a phone. This is going to confuse them even more. We watched as David left multiple voicemails, growing increasingly frantic. Finally, around 8:30 p.m., Susan stood up and started walking toward the parking lot. David followed, still on his phone. They're leaving, I said. Good. Let's give them 15 minutes, then head back to our hotel. Tomorrow's when things get really interesting. What happens tomorrow? Emma smiled mysteriously. Tomorrow, they find out exactly who destroyed their plans and why. Back at our hotel, I finally listened to David's voicemails. Message 1, 8:02 p.m. Claire, I need you to call me back immediately. Something's wrong with our accounts, and I need to access funds. This is important. Message 2, 8:15 p.m. Claire, why aren't you answering? This is serious. Call me back now. Message 3, 8:23 p.m. I don't know what's going on, but if you did something to our accounts, you're making a huge mistake. Call me back or there will be consequences. There it was. The threat. The real David showing through the mask. Consequences, I repeated to Emma. He's threatening me. Save that, Emma said. Send it to Rebecca. It's evidence of his attempts to intimidate you. I forwarded everything to our lawyer, then set my phone on the nightstand. Do you want to see them tomorrow? Emma asked. Face to face? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to hide, to let the lawyers handle everything and never have to look David in the eye again. But another part, a part that was growing stronger every day, wanted to stand in front of him and let him know I wasn't the weak, manipulable woman he'd thought I was. Yes, I said finally. I want them to see me, see us. I want them to know they lost. Emma nodded. Then we'll make sure they do. But first, you should know something. She pulled out her laptop and opened a folder I hadn't seen before. I have video evidence of everything. Hidden cameras I installed in Susan's house over the past 2 years. I have footage of her counting disability money and laughing about how stupid the system is. I have recordings of her and David planning your commitment. I have proof of everything. She turned the laptop to show me. Video after video. Time-stamped. Dated. Indisputable. Emma, this is incredible. How did you manage this? Amazon sells very small cameras. Susan thought I couldn't work a computer well enough to order anything. She was wrong. Emma's smile was sharp. I've been building this case for 2 years. You were the final piece. The proof that she was still doing it. Still destroying people. When do we show this to them? Tomorrow. Rebecca's flying in tonight. I hired her to come out here to serve them papers in person. Tomorrow morning, we're meeting them at their hotel. Legally. With witnesses. And we're going to show them every single piece of evidence we have. I felt something shift in my chest. Not fear anymore. Not even anger. Power. For the first time in years, I had power. Not over David or Susan. I didn't want power over them, but power over my own life. Power to choose what happened next. Let's do it, I said. Let's end this. Emma raised her piña colada glass. To ending things. And to new beginnings. We clinked glasses. And I thought about how 24 hours ago, I'd thought my life was over. Instead, it was just beginning. Rebecca Walsh arrived at our hotel at 9:12 p.m., looking sharp despite the long flight. Ladies, she said, dropping her briefcase on the bed in my room. I have good news, and great news. Start with good, I said. The emergency asset freeze is holding. Judge denied their motion to dismiss. David's lawyer tried to argue it was filed improperly, but our documentation was too solid. Rebecca pulled out her iPad. As of this morning, all joint accounts remain frozen. The house is under legal hold, and Susan's rental properties have liens filed against them. What's the great news? Emma asked. The Social Security fraud investigation moved faster than expected. Federal investigators want to interview both of you next week. If your testimony holds, and with this evidence it will, Susan is looking at federal charges. Minimum 5 years, possibly 10. Rebecca's smile was fierce. David, meanwhile, is facing conspiracy charges for his role in the planned commitment. His lawyer is already putting out feelers about a plea deal. They're turning on each other? I asked. Not yet, but they will. That's what people like this do when consequences arrive. They save themselves and sacrifice everyone else. Rebecca pulled out a stack of papers. These are additional affidavits from David's previous wives. Jennifer Morrison and Catherine Chen both agreed to testify. They're finally ready to face what happened to them. I took the papers with shaking hands. Detailed statements about manipulation, gaslighting, fraudulent psychiatric holds. Stories that mirrored mine so closely, it made me nauseous. How did you find them so fast? I asked. Emma found them, Rebecca said. She's been tracking them for 2 years, waiting for the right time to reach out. Emma nodded. I knew if I ever escaped, I'd need their help to make sure Susan couldn't do this to anyone else. Once I had you, I contacted them. Told them we finally had enough evidence to win. They both said yes immediately. That's incredibly brave, I said. So are you, Jennifer Morrison had written in a note attached to her affidavit. Thank you for having the courage to fight. I wish I had. Maybe together we can stop them from destroying anyone else. I folded the note carefully and put it in my pocket. Tomorrow morning, Rebecca said. We're meeting David and Susan at their hotel at 10 a.m. I'll be serving them with additional papers. Fraud charges, conspiracy documentation, witness statements, everything. Will they try to run? I asked. They can't. I've already contacted hotel security and local police. If they try to leave the island before their scheduled flight, they'll be detained for questioning. Rebecca sat down, her expression becoming serious. I need to prepare you both. This confrontation is going to be ugly. Susan will deny everything. David will try to manipulate you, Claire. They'll say terrible things, make accusations, try to turn this around on you. I'm ready, I said. So am I, Emma added. I've been ready for 16 years. Rebecca nodded. Then let's make sure we do this right. I need you both to stay calm no matter what they say. Don't engage with their attacks. Don't defend yourselves. Just present the facts and let the evidence speak. She pulled out a small recording device. I'll be recording everything for legal purposes. Anything they say can and will be used in court. So let them talk. Let them incriminate themselves further. We spent the next 2 hours rehearsing. Rebecca asked us every horrible question she could think of, preparing us for Susan's attacks. You're an ungrateful bitch who seduced my son. You're a liar who's trying to steal from our family. You manipulated poor Emma into this scheme. By the time we finished, I felt armored, ready. Emma and I went back to our rooms around midnight. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face, heard his voice saying, I love you, while planning my destruction. Around 2 a.m., there was a soft knock on my door. Emma stood in the hallway in pajamas. Can't sleep either? She asked. Not even close. We ended up sitting on my balcony, watching the ocean under moonlight. The sound of waves was soothing, constant. A reminder that the world kept turning even when your personal life exploded. Are you scared about tomorrow? I asked. Terrified, Emma admitted. I've been planning this for so long, but now that it's here, what if I freeze? What if I can't actually confront them? You won't freeze, I said firmly. You've been strong for 16 years. Tomorrow is just one more day. What if Susan convinces people I'm lying, that I really am disabled and this is all some delusion? Emma's voice cracked. She's done it before. She's really good at making people believe her. I turned to look at her. Emma, you have video evidence, medical records, witness testimony. You have me. You have Jennifer and Catherine. You have 2 years of documented proof. Susan can say whatever she wants. The truth doesn't care. Emma nodded, but I could see the fear still there. Can I tell you something? I said. When I first met you, I felt sorry for you. You were this sad, damaged person trapped in a wheelchair. I thought I was being kind by spending time with you. Emma flinched slightly. But you weren't damaged, I continued. You were the strongest person in that entire family. You survived by pretending to be weak. You documented crimes while everyone thought you were incompetent. You outsmarted all of them for 16 years. I grabbed her hand. Tomorrow, you don't have to be scared, because you've already won. Susan just doesn't know it yet. Emma squeezed my hand back, and I saw her straighten her spine, saw the fear transform into determination. You're right, she said. I've already won. Tomorrow is just the reveal. We sat together until sunrise, watching the sky turn from black to navy to pink to gold, watching a new day begin, the day we'd take our lives back. At 9:30 a.m., we met Rebecca in the hotel lobby. She wore a sharp black suit and carried a leather briefcase that looked expensive and intimidating. Ready? She asked. Ready, we said in unison. David and Susan's hotel was a luxury resort, all white stone and tropical landscaping. We met hotel security first. Rebecca had arranged for them to be present as neutral witnesses. At exactly 10 a.m., we knocked on the door of room 347. David opened it. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red, wearing wrinkled clothes. Behind him, I could see Susan sitting rigidly on the bed, her face a mask of fury. What the hell are you doing here? David demanded. Good morning, Mr. Morgan, Rebecca said professionally. I'm attorney Rebecca Walsh. I'm here to serve you and Susan Morgan with additional legal documents regarding ongoing fraud and conspiracy charges. She handed him a thick envelope. David stared at it like it was a snake. You can't just show up here? I can, and I have. These documents are time-sensitive and require immediate attention. Susan stood up, her voice sharp. This is harassment. We're calling the police. Please do, Rebecca said calmly. I've already coordinated with local authorities. They're aware of this meeting and the legal basis for it. Susan's face went white. You, she said, her voice venomous as she looked at me. You did this. You manipulative little… Mrs. Morgan, Rebecca interrupted. I'd advise you to be very careful what you say. This conversation is being recorded, and anything you say can be used in legal proceedings. Susan's mouth snapped shut. David opened the envelope with shaking hands. I watched his face as he read, watched the color drain, watched his eyes widen. These charges, this is insane. We didn't do any of this. Actually, Emma said, stepping forward. You did. David looked up, really looked at Emma for probably the first time in years, and he saw her standing, walking, speaking clearly. Emma? His voice was barely a whisper. You're walking. I've been walking for 16 years, Emma said. I could always walk, always talk. I just pretended I couldn't because Susan made it clear that was the only way I'd survive in this family. Susan made a sound like a wounded animal. You little liar. You've been faking this whole time? I've been surviving, Emma corrected, while you stole disability benefits in my name, locked me in a wheelchair, and told everyone I was brain damaged. I was documenting everything you did. She pulled out her laptop, opened it, and turned it toward footage of you counting stolen money, audio recordings of you planning to have Claire committed, text messages proving David has done this to 3 other women. Everything. She clicked play on a video file. Susan's voice filled the room, recorded in her kitchen 6 months ago. David, the Claire situation needs to be handled soon. She's becoming a liability. Once we get her committed, you can liquidate the assets and we'll split everything. Jennifer was too easy. She broke immediately. Catherine fought more, but we crushed her. Claire will be the same. David's voice responded. I know, Mom. I'm working on it. The psychiatric evaluations are ready. We just need one more incident to justify the hold. Susan lunged for the laptop, but hotel security stepped between us. That's taken out of context, David stammered. Is it? Rebecca pulled out another document. Because we have signed affidavits from Jennifer Morrison and Catherine Chen, both of your previous wives, both describing identical patterns of abuse, both ready to testify. David collapsed onto the bed, head in his hands. Susan's face had gone from white to red, her hands clenched into fists. You have no idea what you've done. We will destroy you. Our lawyers will. Your lawyers have already started plea negotiations, Rebecca interrupted. Your primary attorney called my office yesterday. He's declining to represent you further due to ethical concerns, which is lawyer speak for you're guilty, and I don't want to go down with you. Susan made a choking sound. Rebecca continued, her voice hard. Susan Morgan, you're facing federal fraud charges for 16 years of disability benefits theft. Estimated total, $412,000. David Morgan, you're facing conspiracy charges for 3 counts of fraud and attempted unlawful commitment. Between you, you're looking at 20 to 30 years in federal prison. This is insane, David said, but his voice had no strength. Claire, you know me. I love you. This is all a misunderstanding. Stop, I said. My voice came out stronger than I expected. Don't say you love me. You were going to have me committed to a psychiatric facility so you could steal my assets. You did it to Jennifer. You did it to Catherine. You were doing it to me. That's not... I read your messages, David. I saw the fake psychiatric evaluation you created. I know about Jessica. I know about all of it. David's face crumpled. I can explain. No, you can't. Because there's no explanation that makes this okay. I stepped closer, letting him see my face. I was a good wife. I loved you. I tried to make you happy. And you decided I was disposable, that I was just another mark in your mother's con. I turned to Susan. And you. You created a disabled stepdaughter to steal money. You destroyed 3 women's lives. You turned your son into a predator. For what? For money? For control? Susan's lips curled into a sneer. You have no idea what it takes to survive as a woman alone. I did what I had to do. You tortured people, Emma said, her voice shaking but steady. You locked me in a wheelchair for 16 years. You drugged me when I tried to escape. You stole my entire childhood. You were a burden. I was a child. Emma's voice rose. I was 8 years old, and you decided I was easier to manage if I couldn't walk or talk. You stole my father's life insurance money. You collected disability benefits while I taught myself to walk in secret just to feel human. Tears ran down Emma's face, but she didn't wipe them away. I pretended to be paralyzed for 16 years. 16 years of people treating me like I was brain damaged. 16 years of having no control over my own life. And the whole time, you were stealing from me and laughing about it. Susan opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Rebecca stepped forward. This conversation is over. Mr. Morgan, Mrs. Morgan, you have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. to turn yourselves in to federal authorities. If you don't, warrants will be issued for your arrest. She placed business cards on the dresser. These are the contact numbers for the federal investigators handling your case. I'd strongly advise you to cooperate fully. It might reduce your sentences from 20 years to 10. We walked out of that hotel room, and I didn't look back. In the hallway, Emma grabbed my hand. Hers was shaking. You okay? I asked. I just confronted the people who stole my life, she said. I don't know what I am. You're free, I said. Maybe not okay yet, but free. Rebecca guided us out of the hotel, past curious tourists who had no idea they'd just witnessed the beginning of a major fraud case unraveling. Back at our hotel, we collapsed on my bed, emotionally exhausted. What happens now? I asked. Rebecca checked her phone. Now we wait. They have 31 hours to turn themselves in. If they don't, they become fugitives. Either way, this ends with them in custody. Will they run? Emma asked. Honestly, I don't think they can. Susan's bank accounts are frozen. David has no access to funds. They're stuck on an island with nowhere to go. Rebecca smiled grimly. They came to Hawaii to celebrate destroying you. Instead, they're going to watch their entire world collapse. That's justice. She stood up, smoothing her suit. I need to make some calls. You two should rest. Tomorrow's going to be intense. After she left, Emma and I sat in silence for a long time. Do you think they'll actually go to prison? She asked finally. I hope so. But even if they don't, I paused, looking for the right words. Even if somehow they get away with minimal consequences, we still won. We escaped. We have our lives back. They can't hurt us anymore. Emma nodded slowly. I spent 16 years dreaming about this day. Now that it's here, I feel empty, like I don't know what to do without the plan anymore. So we make a new plan, I said. One that's about living, not surviving. What's your new plan? I thought about it. Finish the divorce. Get my assets back. Maybe move somewhere new. Start a business. I've always wanted to do event planning on my own terms. That sounds nice, Emma said wistfully. What about you? I want to go to college. Actually go, not just online classes in secret. I want to live in a dorm and make friends and be normal. She laughed. I don't even know if I can be normal after all this. Normal's overrated, I said. Be yourself. That's better. We ordered room service and ate on the balcony, watching sunset turn the ocean gold. Tomorrow we'd find out if David and Susan turned themselves in. But tonight, for the first time in years, both of us slept peacefully, free from fear, free from lies, just free. The next morning, Rebecca called at 8 a.m. They didn't show, she said without preamble. Susan and David failed to turn themselves in. Federal marshals are on their way to their hotel now. They're going to be arrested? I asked, putting the phone on speaker so Emma could hear. They're going to be detained for questioning, which, given the evidence, will lead to formal arrest within 24 hours. The district attorney is filing charges this afternoon. Emma and I looked at each other. It was really happening. Can we be there? I asked. When they're arrested? Absolutely not, Rebecca said firmly. That's a law enforcement operation, and you need to stay far away from it. The last thing we need is Susan claiming you orchestrated some kind of public humiliation. But, no buts. You've done your part. You reported the crime, provided evidence, and gave statements. Now let the system do its job. She paused. However, if you happen to be having breakfast at a cafe across the street from their hotel at around 9 a.m., I couldn't stop you from witnessing something through a window. I smiled. Thanks, Rebecca. We got dressed quickly and drove to the cafe she'd mentioned, a small place with outdoor seating and a clear view of the resort entrance. At 8:47 a.m., 3 black SUVs pulled up to the hotel. Federal agents in suits and bulletproof vests got out. My heart started pounding. At 8:53 a.m., David and Susan were escorted out of the hotel, both of them in handcuffs. Susan was screaming something. I couldn't hear what, but her face was red and contorted with rage. David looked broken, defeated. He kept his head down, not looking at anyone. They were put in separate SUVs and driven away. Emma grabbed my hand so tight it hurt. They're really arrested. It's really happening. It's really happening, I confirmed, watching the SUVs disappear down the road. A weird feeling washed over me. Not satisfaction exactly, not happiness, just closure. The nightmare was over. They couldn't hurt anyone else. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Rebecca, both in custody. Initial hearing scheduled for tomorrow. You're free to go home whenever you want. Your job here is done. I showed Emma the message. Do you want to go home? She asked. I looked around. We were in Hawaii. The sun was shining. The ocean was beautiful. For the first time in years, I had no obligations. No one to answer to. Nothing to be afraid of. Actually, I said slowly, I think I want to stay a few days. Have a real vacation. One where I'm not afraid or angry or planning revenge. Just a vacation. Emma's face lit up. Can I stay too? Are you kidding? After everything we've been through, you're stuck with me. I smiled. Besides, someone needs to teach me how to be a normal person again. We can figure it out together. We spent the next 3 days actually enjoying Hawaii, snorkeling in clear water, eating fresh pineapple, watching sunsets, doing all the tourist things Susan had probably planned to do while celebrating my destruction. The irony was delicious. On our last night, we had dinner at a nice restaurant on the beach. As we ate, I thought about how different this trip could have been. If Emma hadn't walked into that kitchen, if she hadn't given me that envelope, if I'd been alone, isolated, vulnerable, I'd probably be in a psychiatric facility right now. David would have my house, my savings, my life. Instead, I was here, free, whole, healing. Thank you, I said suddenly. Emma looked up from her plate. For what? For trusting me? For saving me? For being brave enough to stop pretending? She smiled. Thank you for seeing me as a person, for caring about what I wanted, for being the reason I could finally stop hiding. We clinked our water glasses together. To new beginnings, I said. To choosing ourselves, Emma added. We flew home 3 days after David and Susan's arrest. Returning to North Carolina felt surreal, like we'd left behind our old lives in Hawaii and were returning as completely different people. Rebecca met us at her office the day after we landed. Good news, she said, spreading files across her desk. David and Susan both appeared at their initial hearing. Susan tried to argue the charges were fraudulent. David broke down crying and asked for a plea deal. They're turning on each other? I asked. Not yet, but they will. Susan blames David for being weak. David blames Susan for manipulating him his entire life. It's going to be a mess, and that mess works in our favor. Rebecca pulled out a document. The judge granted the emergency asset protection. All marital property is frozen until divorce proceedings conclude. Given the criminal charges, I expect you'll be awarded the house, the joint accounts, and potentially additional damages. How much? I asked. Conservatively, you're looking at about $200,000 after legal fees. More if we pursue civil suits against both of them. I sat back, stunned. I'm going to be okay. Financially. You're going to be more than okay. You're going to be independent. Rebecca turned to Emma. And you, young lady, are about to become very wealthy. Emma blinked. What? Your father's life insurance trust was mismanaged by Susan. The original amount was $300,000. She stole about $200,000, but the remaining $100,000 has been earning interest for 16 years. Rebecca smiled. Combined with the restitution you'll receive from her fraud conviction, you're looking at around $400,000. Emma's eyes widened. $400,000? Plus Susan's rental properties. She bought them using your money. You have a legal claim to them. We're working with prosecutors to have them transferred to you as part of restitution. I'm going to own houses? Emma sounded dazed. 3 properties in good locations. You can sell them or keep them as rental income. Either way, you'll be financially secure for life. I grabbed Emma's hand. You did it. You're free and you're set. You can do whatever you want now. Tears ran down Emma's face. I can go to college. You can go anywhere, Rebecca said. You've earned it. The trial was set for 6 months later. Were released on bail with ankle monitors and strict travel restrictions. I never saw David again. He moved to his mother's house, the one that was about to be seized by the government, and stayed there awaiting trial. Emma and I became roommates in my house, the one David no longer had any claim to. She enrolled in community college, taking art classes and general education courses. I watched her blossom, becoming the person she'd been forced to hide for so long. One evening about 2 months after Hawaii, I came home from a meeting with my divorce lawyer to find Emma painting in the living room. She'd converted one corner into a studio space, and colorful canvases covered every wall. How was the meeting? She asked, not looking up from her work. David signed the divorce papers, I said. No contest. He's giving me everything in exchange for me not filing additional civil suits. Emma's brush paused. Is it over? It's over. I'm officially divorced. She set down her paintbrush and hugged me. How do you feel? Relieved, sad, free, all of it at once. That's normal, Emma said. You loved him once. It's okay to mourn that, even if he turned out to be terrible. I nodded, grateful for her understanding. I got an email from Jennifer today, Emma said, returning to her painting. She asked if we wanted to meet for coffee next month. Catherine, too. They want to form a support group for survivors of Susan and David's abuse, for survivors in general, people who've been through similar situations. They said what we did, fighting back, exposing them, gave them courage to heal. I felt something warm spread through my chest. We should do it. Form a group. Help other people. I was thinking the same thing. Emma added a bright yellow stroke to her canvas. Maybe we could even turn it into a nonprofit eventually. Help women escape abusive situations. Fund legal help for people who can't afford it. That's a great idea, I said. We could call it Second Chance Foundation, or something better that we'll think of later. Emma grinned. We have time to figure it out. The trial happened in late November. Cold rain fell on the courthouse steps as Emma and I walked in with Rebecca. Inside, Susan and David sat at separate defense tables. They'd ended up with different lawyers after all, and the hostility between them was obvious. Susan wore a conservative suit and kept her face blank. David looked like he'd aged 10 years in 6 months. I testified first, detailed everything, the emotional abuse, the gaslighting, the fake psychiatric evaluations, showed text messages, bank records, the whole ugly truth. David's lawyer tried to trip me up on cross-examination. suggesting I was bitter about a normal divorce and exaggerating everything. Then Rebecca played the video evidence, Susan's voice, clear as day, discussing plans to have me committed. The courtroom went silent. Emma testified next, described 16 years of captivity, showed medical records proving she'd never had permanent damage from her childhood illness, presented financial documents showing Susan had stolen over $400,000 in disability benefits. Susan's lawyer objected repeatedly, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. Susan Morgan, 8 years federal prison for disability fraud, conspiracy, and elder abuse. David Morgan, 5 years federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted illegal commitment. Both were taken into custody immediately. I watched them being led away in handcuffs and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just relief that it was finally, completely over. Outside the courthouse, Emma and I stood in the rain. "We won," she said quietly. "We won," I confirmed. Jennifer and Catherine were waiting by our car. They'd come to watch the verdict. "Thank you," Jennifer said, her eyes red from crying. "Thank you for having the courage to fight, for exposing them, for making sure they couldn't do this to anyone else. We should have done it sooner," Catherine added. "Should have been braver, like you two." "You're brave now," I said. "That's what matters." The 4 of us stood together in the rain, 4 women who'd survived the same predators, now free. "Coffee next week?" Jennifer suggested. "Start planning that support group?" "Absolutely," I said. As we drove away from the courthouse, Emma turned to me. "Do you think they'll actually serve their full sentences?" "I don't know. Probably not. People rarely do. But even if they get out early, they're ruined. Susan will never get custody of anyone again. David will have a felony record. They'll be broke. They'll be alone." "Good," Emma said firmly. We drove home in comfortable silence, and I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Wasn't scared. Wasn't controlled by what David and Susan had done. I was just me, Claire, 29 years old, divorced, healing, free, and that was enough. 1 year later, I stood in the lobby of a small community center we'd rented for the afternoon. Emma was hanging a banner that read, "Second Chances Support Group, You Are Not Alone." We'd officially formed the nonprofit 6 months ago. Started small, just meetings for survivors of domestic abuse, fraud, gaslighting. Now we had 40 regular members and we're expanding to offer legal aid referrals and emergency housing assistance. Jennifer ran the legal aid program. Catherine managed the emergency fund. Emma handled outreach and art therapy sessions. I coordinated everything and did event planning for our fundraisers. We weren't rich. We weren't famous. But we were helping people. And that felt more important than anything. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer. "Rebecca, Susan Morgan denied early release. Will serve full sentence. Thought you'd want to know." I showed Emma the message. She smiled. "Good. 8 years to think about what she did." "What about David?" I asked. "Got early release after 3 years, Rebecca had told me last month. He's living in Arizona now, working in telemarketing. Completely broke. His mother won't speak to him. She blames him for everything." I'd felt a brief flicker of pity for him. Brief. Then I remembered the fake psychiatric evaluations and the pity died. People started arriving for the meeting. Women and men who'd survived similar situations. People who'd been gaslit, abused, controlled, nearly destroyed. I watched them come in, watched them find seats, watched them start to talk to each other, watched healing happen in real time. "You did this," Emma said, appearing beside me. "You made this space possible." "We did this," I corrected. "All of us. Every person who was brave enough to fight back and survive." After the meeting ended, Emma and I locked up the community center and walked to a nearby cafe. It had become our ritual. Coffee after meetings, talking about nothing important, just being. "I got accepted to State University," Emma said casually, stirring her latte. I nearly dropped my cup. "Emma, that's incredible. When did you find out?" "This morning. Full scholarship. They want me to start in the fall. Are you going to go?" She smiled. "I think so. I'm terrified, but I think I'm ready to be around people my own age. To be normal, or whatever normal is." You're going to be amazed. College students have no idea they're about to meet the strongest person on campus. What about you? Emma asked. What's your next chapter? I thought about it. I've been thinking about expanding the nonprofit. Maybe buying a building so we can offer longer-term housing. I met with a grant writer last week. There's funding available for domestic violence support services. That sounds perfect for you, Emma said. And I hesitated. I've been thinking about dating again. Maybe. Eventually. Emma's eyes widened. Really? That's huge. I know, I'm terrified. But I also think I don't want David and Susan to take that away from me forever. The ability to trust people, to be vulnerable, to love. You're one of the bravest people I know, Emma said. If you're ready, then I'm excited for you. We sat in comfortable silence, watching people pass by the cafe window. Normal people living normal lives, with no idea what we'd survived to get to this moment. Do you think about them? Emma asked suddenly. Susan and David? Sometimes, I admitted. Usually when I'm falling asleep, I think about what they tried to do. What could have happened if you hadn't walked into that kitchen? What do you feel when you think about it? I considered. Grateful. I'm grateful it ended the way it did. Grateful I met you. Grateful we escaped. The anger is mostly gone. Sometimes I miss who I thought David was, but I don't miss who he actually was. I feel the same about Susan, Emma said. Sometimes I imagine having a real mother, someone who loved me. But then I remember she was never going to be that person. So I just let it go. You're wise beyond your years, I said. I'm 25 years old, and I've been pretending to be paralyzed since I was 8, Emma said dryly. I better be wise. That's a lot of time to think. We both laughed. As we left the cafe, Emma linked her arm through mine. Thank you, Claire, for everything, for seeing me, for believing me, for being the sister I wish I'd had all along. You're the one who saved me, I said. I'd be in a psychiatric facility right now if it weren't for you. We saved each other, Emma corrected. That's what makes it work. We walked back to our car, Emma's car, bought with money from selling one of Susan's seized properties, and drove home. Home. Not David's house, not Susan's property. Ours. A space we'd created together, filled with Emma's paintings and my event planning chaos, and the comfortable mess of 2 women rebuilding their lives. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the past year, about everything we'd survived, everything we'd built. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Rebecca. Rebecca, final restitution payment came through. Check your account. You're officially free of all financial ties to David and Susan. It's over. I checked my bank account. The balance was higher than it had ever been. Money from the house sale, the divorce settlement, the restitution payments. Enough to be comfortable. Enough to expand the nonprofit. Enough to build the life I wanted. It was over. The nightmare was truly, finally over. I set my phone down and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in my own house, go to work at the nonprofit I'd built, have coffee with Emma before she left for college, maybe go on a date with that nice man from the coffee shop who'd been asking. Tomorrow, I'd live, not survive, not hide, not pretend, just live, and that was more than enough. Claire stood at the podium of the convention center, looking out at 300 faces. The Second Chance's annual fundraiser had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. 5 years ago, she began, I was a woman trapped in an abusive marriage, being gaslit and manipulated by people I trusted. I thought I was alone. I thought I was crazy. I thought there was no way out. She paused, finding Emma in the crowd. Emma smiled and gave her a thumbs up. But I wasn't alone. None of us are, and that's why we're here tonight. To show every person who's being abused, controlled, or manipulated, you are not crazy, you are not alone, and there is always a way out. The applause was thunderous. After her speech, Emma found her backstage. You killed it, she said, hugging Claire tight. We killed it, Claire corrected. This was always a team effort. Speaking of team, Emma said, pulling back with a mischievous smile. How was your date last week? The one with the doctor you kept not telling me about? Claire felt her face heat. It was good, really good. Are you seeing him again? Tonight, actually, after this wraps up, Emma squealed. Claire, that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. It's early, Claire cautioned. We're taking it slow. But, yeah, I like him. He's kind, honest, normal. You deserve normal, Emma said. You deserve everything good. They stood together backstage, watching volunteers set up for the silent auction. I heard David's getting remarried, Emma said casually. Claire turned in surprise. Really? Who told you? Jennifer saw it on Facebook. Some woman he met in Arizona. She has no idea about his past, apparently. Should we warn her? Claire asked, then shook her head. No, that's not our job anymore. He's her problem now. And Susan? Still in prison. Gets out in 2 years. Claire shrugged. I don't think about her much anymore. She's just not part of my life. Good, Emma said firmly. She doesn't deserve space in your head. As the fundraiser continued, Claire looked around at everything they'd built. The nonprofit had helped over 200 people escape abusive situations. They'd funded legal battles, provided emergency housing, created a community of survivors who supported each other. All because one night, Emma had chosen to stop pretending, had chosen to walk across a kitchen with proof in her hands, had chosen to save them both. Later that night, Claire sat across from Michael, the doctor, the kind man, the person who saw her as whole and valuable, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, not hope that someone would save her. She'd already saved herself. Hope that she could build something new, something real, something based on honesty and respect and choosing each other every day. You seem happy, Michael observed, smiling at her over his wineglass. I am, Claire said, and realized it was completely true. For the first time in a long time, I really am. And as they talked and laughed and planned a second date, Claire thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago, trapped, scared, convinced she was losing her mind. She wished she could go back and tell that woman, "You're not crazy. Help is coming. You're going to survive this. You're going to more than survive. You're going to build something beautiful from the ashes." But she couldn't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward, choose ourselves, fight for our freedom, and help others do the same. That's what Second Chances was really about. Not just escaping abuse, but learning to live again, to trust again, to love yourself enough to demand better. Claire had learned that lesson the hard way, but she'd learned it, and now she was teaching it to others. One survivor at a time, one story at a time, one second chance at a time. Because everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves to be seen as a full human being. Everyone deserves to walk away from people who treat them like they're disposable. And everyone deserves to know you are not alone, you are not crazy, and you are stronger than you think. That's the story Claire would tell anyone who asked. And that's the truth that set her free. What do you think? Was the revenge justified? Should Emma have revealed herself sooner? Could David have been redeemed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if you've survived something similar, know that you're not alone. Subscribe for more powerful stories about courage, justice, and choosing yourself.